So I received a lot of questions and comments on my last video that I made about my music book, and so I thought I would talk about all the things that people were saying. The number one thing that people were talking to me about was to leave the history part in. I decided to leave the history part in. Hopefully it's neutral and informative for people who are curious about what was going on in Ireland at the time. Another comment was to create videos, tutorials, and demonstration videos of the songs. And yes, that is also a plan. I have a demonstration video all set and ready to go, so when Amazon says, yes, your book is approved and everything's hunky-dory and it's listed, I will release that video. So that is coming soon. I also have fancy videos ready to go and I'm going to be mixing those in with my other content so that it's not a whole bunch of Carolan all at once. But that's coming too. And then the final thing is tutorials, and that is a really good idea. They even mentioned including links in the PDF version, so I really like that idea. So as I make tutorial videos, I will update the PDF with like a tutorial link section. Another couple comments were about Kindle downloads and will it be available specifically for Kindle. That was interesting because I did not know people were reading music books off of their Kindles. I keep thinking of like the little tiny Kindles, but then I looked it up and they have like big Kindles now, so it makes sense people want to read their music books from there. I'm going to offer a PDF version, which would work with tablets, but I noticed that Kindle wants it to be like HTML, kind of a website or like Word document format. I need to work on that, but I'm going to look into it more. I've looked at other music book Kindle formats, and so far the reviews aren't very good. Apparently there's a lot of problems with the staffs showing up, and when I just kind of popped my PDF into their Kindle viewer, which is, they tell you not to do that, but I was just kind of curious what it would do. The staffs did not appear, so I'm guessing that's what some of the other people have done, and I think I can imagine in my head a workaround to get it to work. It's just a matter of implementing it and seeing if it actually works. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to look into it more. It won't be available right away, but eventually it hopefully will come out. Will you offer a spiral bound version? Or like people mentioned they don't like glued spines. This is a glued spine, which to be honest I don't like glued spines either. I will say though that this isn't that bad. Like I've seen music books where like you can't even open them, they're always closing on you. As far as glued spine music books go, I think it's thin enough and wide enough to where it's not a super big annoyance. But I also agree I don't particularly like glued spines. I looked into spiral bound music book options, especially for print on demand. Lulu Publishing, I think, print on demand, they offer spiral bound print on demand books, which is great. I was so excited when I saw that until I looked up their international shipping rates, and they were really steep. I can't quite remember what they were, but I think it was like $10 or 10 British pounds or something to ship a book internationally. It was, don't quote me on that, it was crazy high in my opinion. It was almost the same cost of the book, and I was like, that's ridiculous. So I dropped the idea of Lulu and I started looking into Ingram Spark because they have saddle stitch options. Then I found out the book has to be less than 40 pages to be saddle stitched, and mine was technically 63. So I had a couple options. I could shrink all the music notes down so that every song fit on 2 pages, and then it would be less than 40 pages and I could get the saddle stitch. I could do the spiral bound and have people pay really high shipping costs, which I don't want that to happen. And then the final option was to just go with the glued spine. So yeah, that's why I went with glued spine. I went around and around in circles with that. Hopefully people aren't too mad about the glued spine. How would a beginner fare with this book? That is a good question. I wrote this book intending it to be playable for like a mid-beginner to an intermediate violin player. If it were to be measured in Suzuki books, because that's a common learning system, I'd say it fits most likely between halfway through Suzuki Book 2, so around Dvorak's Humoresque, through Suzuki Book 3, and into the beginning of Suzuki Book 4. The most difficult songs are most likely Carolan's Concerto, Dennis O'Connor, Carolan's Quarrel with the Landlady, Morgan Megan, and Carolan's Receipt. Those are the songs that have the most stuff going on. The mid-level difficulty are most likely Planks to Hewlett, Princess Royal, Sir Charles Coote, Carolan's Welcome, and Shebag Shamour. I'd say that those 5 are like the mid-level. And then the easiest ones are Captain O'Kane, Fanny Power, Colonel John Irwin, Eleanor Plunkett, and George Brabazon's Second Air. So there's about 5 songs for each level. I would say that the actual melody lines and the individual parts are fairly playable for people pretty new to the violin. Putting all 3 parts together is where this book is tricky. Everybody has a fairly melodic and moving harmony line, and it is a little bit more difficult to put those kind of harmonies together than it is a very chord-based harmony. Hopefully that helps answer that question. So I'm going to talk about some things that people didn't really ask questions about, but I think maybe are worth mentioning. The first is I wrote the second harmony, so harmony 2, with the common registers of violin and viola in mind. There are 2 songs that go above, well, onto what would be the violin E string for the second harmony. The first is Carolan's Concerto, in which there's this D arpeggio, but then it goes above the high D up to an F sharp, which would normally be on a violin's E string. And then the other song is Carolan's Receipt. There's this little moment where you go up to a G on the E string. So there's 2 songs out of 15 that are kind of high for viola for a brief moment, but the rest of them would do well with either a violin or a viola. So I do have Boeings included in this book, and they were kind of hard for me to come up with. So there are some Boeings where it's more like down bows on the offbeat sort of thing, to kind of lift it up a little bit and use the bow to help shape the phrase of the song. And then other songs use the bow in a more like tone developed kind of mindset, which is more like what I think of classical bowings. So if you are very classical, you might feel there are times where it's a little bit different than what you'd expect as a classical violinist. So another thing is, although I have bowings, I do not have fingerings. It is all meant to be played in first position, and open strings are perfectly acceptable for Irish folk music. Another little thing to keep in mind is if you are a professional violinist and you have 1 or 2 other friends who you like to play more formal acoustic performances with, so like at weddings, I think a book like this would be really nice to have, because they're simple enough to where I think a professional violinist or group of people could really pretty much sight read through these. It's always nice to have a bunch of simple things to add to your repertoire. The other thing is that I have created another separate website to have like my store stuff. So I'm gonna have my digital download version of this book available, and then I'll also link to the Amazon listing. And I'm planning to order about 10 books from Amazon, and I'm going to autograph them. I feel weird doing that, but I'll autograph them and I'll have them in my store. So I hope that this has been informative and maybe helps answer some questions you may have had about my music book. It's coming out this weekend, I hope. Technically, the Amazon listing is currently live for people who live in the United States. But I wanted to wait until it was available in more Amazon marketplaces worldwide before I released the official demonstration video and opened up my store and all of that. Thank you for watching. Bye!